What do you get when you cross Doom, the Marathon series, and Waifustein 3D with an anime waifu? Well, you get the Citadel, a unique first-person shooter developed by a guy whose name I'm not even going to try to pronounce. So this game literally came out of nowhere a few days ago, and ever since I've had a bunch of people messaging me asking me to check it out. Usually when I get those kind of messages, one of two things happens. The game itself is either amazing, or the game is an absolute train wreck. Well, this time I'm happy to say that it's the former. And I pretty much finished this entire thing in 2 sittings. The Steam store page describes this as a cross between games like Doom and Waifustein, and those are influences that are definitely felt. There's even a secret level that recreates E1M1 from Doom. But to me, it kind of feels more like a combination of Brutal Doom, Head On, and Project Warlock. You've got the over-the-top gore and sprite work of Brutal Doom, the atmosphere, the ambience and waifu of Head On, and similar gunplay and movement controls to Project Warlock. Only thing is, the Citadel adds in a lot more platforming to the mix. Yeah son, get ready to give that spacebar a bit of a workout. Now, to be honest, I have little to no idea what's going on in this thing, but as far as I can tell is that you're supposed to be some kind of ass-kicking cyborg similar to 2B from Nier, having to descend down a citadel inhabited by cultists and mechanical soldiers as you defeat 6 fallen angels, or something like that. Honestly, I really have no clue, and the language barrier isn't really helping either. All you need to know is that you're going to be shooting pretty much everything that moves, all of which is going to explode in a fantastic looking shower of blood, flesh, and metal. Part of what instantly drew me to this thing when I started playing was just how satisfying the shooting is, and I wasn't kidding when I said that everything explodes in this game. Every single enemy's demise is emphasized by a gratifying display of their entire body disrupting into multiple parts and being scattered across the ground, and the sound effect for this is kinda like ASMR. And honestly too, I swear that one of the sounds when an enemy dies in this thing is a zombie man scream from Doom that's been pitch shifted. At times you'll even see their remains hopelessly crawling across the ground. It's pretty rad. To accommodate all of this, you're given some really fun weapons to play around with. Your melee weapon is an axe, which I used all of twice throughout the entire game, but the real starting weapon is the Magnum. Hard-hitting hand cannon that would do Dirty Harry proud. As you're going to learn pretty quickly, headshots in this game do massive damage, and popping all of these cultists and grunts in the head with this thing just never gets old. Every weapon in the game also has an alternate fire mode, and with the Magnum, you stick a grenade on the end of this thing, turning it into a powerful grenade launcher. Grenades are kind of abundant in the game too, and with the quick press of the G button, you can lob one of these bad boys out into a group of enemies who all make no attempts to move away from it before it explodes. You could probably guess what I'm going to say next, and that's that you've also got an assault rifle and a shotgun. The assault rifle is called the auto rifle, and it has the benefit of an alternate fire mode that shoots out a laser beam that literally causes enemies to explode. Because if there's one thing you can never have enough of, it's making enemies explode. The shotgun, referred to as a blunderbuss in the game, is about what you'd expect. Kills most of the basic enemies in a single hit, and the alternate fire mode is another kind of grenade launcher, loading in a single rocket shell instead of the standard shell. About the only thing that I don't like with these first couple of weapons is that you have to manually reload every bullet for the Magnum and every shell for the shotgun, mashing that R button the entire time. I mean, why we just couldn't hold down the reload button is beyond me. But still, these are some solid starting weapons, and falling back to something like the Magnum, even later on in the game, is still a viable tactic. After that, you've got a chain gun with the alternate fire mode that just happens to be a goddamn flamethrower. I mean, a chain gun alone is an awesome weapon to have, but one that also has the alternate fire mode of a flamethrower, I mean, it's just the pinnacle of FPS weapon design. The benefit of using the flamethrower too is that it also sets enemies on fire, and they'll run around screaming in pain like they're the cultists or zombies from Blood. The other automatic weapon is a fast-firing SMG called the Flechette, which can also be dual-welded, but the reload time for this thing, combined with its low damage output, I thought made it one of the less useful weapons in the game, which is kind of a shame. I mean, you should be able to tear ass with SMGs, not suck ass. To be expected, there's also a rocket launcher, which kind of reminds me a lot of the one from Return to Castle Waifustein. And sitting in the sniper rifle slot is the whale gun. Yeah son, the whale gun. A weapon designed to be used against your mum. Definitely fucking destroys everything it hits though, and it also highlights the game's ballistic system. You see, every weapon in this game, either the players or the enemies, are projectile based. So when you're firing at someone from a distance with the whale gun, for instance, you're gonna have to take into account bullet velocity and even bullet drop over time. Just kind of makes the game a lot more balanced, and also the shooting a lot more skill based. It just makes it more than holding your crosshair on something and pressing the left mouse button. The last few weapons you get your little anime hands on are also pretty awesome. You've got remote detonation charges you can find later in the game, which kind of reminds me of the satchel charges from Half-Life, even down to your character setting them off with a similar looking little remote control. Like every other weapon in the game, it does its job of ending the lives of whatever you're aiming at in gloriously violent fashion. There's a few one-off use weapons you're gonna find too, one of which lets you call down an airstrike on a specific section of a level, like you're playing as Soap in Modern Warfare or something. There's a super powerful minigun with limited ammo you can pick up and walk around with, which not only obliterates enemies but also obliterates your frame rate. Along with the minigun, there's a hyper cannon which looks a lot like the plasma gun from Doom 64, shooting out some very similar looking projectiles. And the Vin Diesel gun, which is just a fancy name for a flamethrower, just behaves exactly the same as the alternate fire mode for the chain gun. What I think is also one of the most interesting elements to the game is that you've kind of got this survival mechanic as well. At the bottom of the screen you can see you've got 3 bars, right? You've got your health, air supply, which is kind of like stamina, and then your food meter. You use blood packs to recover your health, you suck back on air canisters to replenish your air supply, and obviously chow down on food to stave off hunger. Hunger's going to decide how much health and air you've got too, so you're going to want to keep this chick stuffed with food the entire time. There's even an upgrade where you can overdose on air canisters to give yourself slow motion for a few seconds. I mean, with all the other mechanics this guy's managed to cram into this thing, he also found some room for bullet time. It actually works pretty well too, and if nothing else, it just kind of lets you appreciate how good this thing looks when enemies explode upon death. Just kind of makes me wish this was an option you could toggle on or off at a whim. It also kind of ties into the game's currency system. Throughout the levels and as you're killing enemies, you're picking up gold, which can then be spent on extra ammo or even weapon upgrades from this cute little vendor who somehow happens to always know where you are and pop up in the most remote locations. Upgrade the whale gun so it's got a better zoom distance. Upgrade the rocket launcher so it can fire 4 rockets before needing to reload instead of 1. Give the auto rifle a red dot sight or a burst fire mode. You can even upgrade the shotgun and turn it into an auto shotgun called the Shock Hammer. You know what's better than a normal shotgun? Yeah, an automatic shotgun. Nothing bad has ever come out of letting you fire a shotgun faster in a video game. Nothing. If that ain't enough, you've also got a double jump move. You can sprint and press Q, and you can even kick enemies, stunning them or just booting them off ledges to what I assume is going to be their horrific death several thousand stories below. It all combines to make the Citadel a pretty unique shooter. A lot of these kind of throwback shooters often just try to capture the look and feel of those old games without trying to add anything new to the formula, but that's not something that the Citadel falls into. At a glance, it does just kind of look like it could be a Doom mod, but when you start playing it and pick up on all the little mechanics that have been added in, you'll start to see that it's really in a league of its own. You could be forgiven though for thinking that it is a Doom mod, and in fact when I first saw screenshots of it, I'd have sworn that it was. But instead the Citadel runs on the Unreal Engine 4. Not that that really means anything though, considering it could have pulled off the same visuals on pretty much any other current engine, or even any old engine for that matter. Level design features lots of verticality, not to mention a whole bunch of platforming to make it a lot more than just running around on the same surface for 30 odd levels. I think a lot of the enemy designs are pretty cool too. You've got those robed cultists, there's a couple of different soldier looking types, there's a dude with a flamethrower, different robots and turrets, and even some giant mechs. At one point you can even hop into and control one of those mech suits too, jumping from platform to platform and turning enemies into paste with your high-powered machine guns. Another extended sequence in this suit has you leveling what I'm assuming is supposed to be entire buildings. There's 7 acts in the game, and every act is comprised of 5 levels that also ends in a boss fight. The way that I describe the bosses in this game is that they're kind of like watered down bullet hell fights. The kind of encounters where you're just getting spammed with projectiles and have to stay on the move the entire time. I think the fact that pretty much every single level always has you moving across platforms and structures where you can easily fall off and die means that there's always a constant sense of unease in the back of your mind when you're playing this thing. It really is that simple to misstep here and fall to your death. In fact, I think the majority of times I died in this game, of which it was admittedly not a lot, was just by mistiming a jump. and some of these areas can be truly asshole puckering stuff. There's only a few times in the later acts though where this starts to become an issue, and there's only a couple of levels when you're almost entirely jumping from platform to platform. But again, it all just kind of serves to make it feel less like a Doom mod and more of its own thing. It's a really unique atmosphere that's created here. This industrial, grungy, almost surreal and horror-like ambience, combined with the violent and gory combat and the at times cutesy anime aesthetic. But don't be fooled, Sonny Jim, because this ain't an easy game, and it sure as hell can be challenging sometimes. I mean, things start off pretty tame, but get a few acts in and you're going to be putting all of your weapons to the test. The Citadel does have a few problems though. I think one of the lesser ones is that the sprite work in this, as good as it is, has only been created to show the front of enemies. And this is kinda lazy. I mean, even in Waifustein 3D, they had sprites for the back of every single enemy in the game, and that shit's almost 20 years old now. The save system in this is also really weird as well. Now, you have limited lives, and if you kill during a level, you lose a life and either have to restart from a checkpoint or from the beginning of the level itself. If you lose all of your lives though, you're instead thrown back to the main hub and have to do the entire act all over again. Now look, I'm not asking for a quick save mechanic, and I think save scumming in a game like this would just trivialize the levels, considering a lot of them involve platforming over bottomless pits. And the option to quick save before jumping just defeats the point of having platforming in the game in the first place. But at least some kind of option to manually save at the beginning of a level would have been good. The other thing I noticed is that there's not that much variety to the level design. Even with the 7 acts in the game, with each episode having 5 or so levels, you're going to be seeing some pretty familiar looking textures and environments. The same looking wall, floor and ceiling texture you'll see in Act 1, you're going to be seeing at the end of Act 6 and 7. And while some of the enemies aren't introduced until the later acts, you'll still have seen most, if not all of them, before you've even hit the halfway mark. Aside from, obviously the bosses. When I think this game is at its best is during the more cramped levels where you can break line of sight easily or at least put the cover to good use. But there's a few opened up levels where they put enemies above you on ledges out of your field of view, and you'll quite often just be getting peppered with projectiles from these guys that you cannot even see. Kinda reminds me of playing Doom 2 and some of those similar levels, where you'd just be taking constant damage from some chain gunner that was perched somewhere on the other side of the map. And again, the same thing happens here. In its defense, every enemy attack in the game is a projectile attack, not hit scanning, which, believe me, I'm all for. But I mean, you still can't avoid something if you can't see it in the first place. And at times, you feel a bit like a fish being shot at in a very large barrel. By far, the biggest threat you'll face in the Citadel though is the one to your frame rate. Yeah son, this ain't the smoothest experience, and it's pretty common for the frame rate to take a serious dump into single digits, or even just lock up entirely for brief moments, usually when a lot of stuff is happening at once, like during explosions. This is easily, I think, the biggest problem in the game right now, and what affects it the most consistently in a negative way. At one point I checked my CPU usage when I was playing and it was around 95%, which is just insane. It's a bit of a shame because outside of the jibs and explosions, this is hardly a visually stunning game. I mean, it's got a unique art style and it does look creative, but it's hardly pushing photorealistic graphics or high polygon models. Outside of the environment, everything is made up of 2D sprites. The skyboxes are usually just flat colours and the geometry is pretty basic. I mean, there's no reason for a game that looks like this to run so poorly. But you know what, for a game that seems like it's been pretty much made by one person, I am kind of willing to let this slide. And overall, I think the Citadel is pretty solid, all things considered. All up, you're looking at about 4 or so hours to get through the whole thing, maybe a little bit more if you take your time and look for all the secret levels. The price might seem a little bit high, but there is at least the option for a New Game Plus mode, where you can go back through the game with your upgraded guns from the beginning and just steamroll through all of the enemies like a complete bully. The Citadel literally came out of nowhere and managed to win me over with its interesting premise and solid gunplay. I hope this guy can somehow fix the issues with the performance with upcoming patches, because at the moment it's the one thing holding it back from being great. And then hopefully he can improve upon all of this even further for the Citadel 2.